The pre-dawn darkness clung to Raven's Hollow like a shroud, thick and suffocating in the way only mountain mist could manage. In the training courtyard below the eastern battlements, a single figure moved through combat forms with mechanical precision. Each strike flowed into the next with the kind of muscle memory that came from decades of warfare, yet something essential was missing. The movements held no soul. Alpha Donovan Ashford had been the kingdom's greatest warrior once. They had called him the Winter Wolf, a name whispered with reverence in royal halls and with fear in enemy camps. His white wolf form had been legend-made flesh, silent as falling snow and twice as deadly. But that was 3 years ago. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days to be exact. Not that he counted. Not anymore. The wooden practice sword cut through morning air with a sound like tearing silk. Sweat beaded on his brow despite the autumn chill, and his hands trembled slightly as he transitioned into a defensive stance. Silver streaks had appeared in his dark hair over the past months, spreading like frost across stone. His reflection in the courtyard's standing water showed a man aging faster than time should allow. The wolf inside him was dying, and he was dying with it. From the shadows near the armory, Captain Marcus Stone watched his commander with barely concealed frustration. The beta shifter had served under Donovan for 15 years, had fought beside the Winter Wolf through campaigns that became the stuff of battlefield legend. He had watched plague claim Lady Catherine 3 years ago, had stood witness as grief transformed his alpha into something cold and distant. But this slow deterioration was harder to watch than any enemy blade finding its mark. Marcus stepped into the courtyard, his boots crunching on frost-rimmed stone. His own wolf stirred beneath his skin, restless and concerned. Pack bonds ran deep among shifters, and an alpha's pain resonated through every member. The breaking, they called it. When an alpha refused to shift for too long, when the wolf was caged by will or curse, the deterioration affected not just the individual but the entire pack structure. Lord Ashford. Marcus's voice carried the rough edge of a man who had smoked too many campfires and shouted too many battle orders. Your soldiers report increased rogue activity along the northern border. They request permission to organize shifted patrols. Donovan did not pause in his forms. Permission granted. Coordinate with the watch commander. The men request their alpha lead them. Marcus pressed forward, knowing he walked dangerous ground. They need to see the Winter Wolf. They need to know their commander still hunts. The practice sword stopped mid-swing. Donovan turned slowly, and Marcus saw what 3 years without shifting had done to eyes that once blazed silver blue in wolf form. They had dulled to winter gray, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. I am no longer fit to lead shifted patrols. Donovan's words came flat, empty of the warmth that had once defined him as a leader who inspired loyalty beyond duty. Assign rotation to the senior betas. They are more than capable. More capable than an alpha who cannot shift? The challenge hung between them like drawn steel. Marcus knew he risked much by speaking truth so plainly, but 18 years of brotherhood earned a man certain privileges, even with his commanding officer. Donovan's jaw tightened. His hand moved unconsciously to his chest, where beneath leather jerkin and linen shirt, silver scars traced patterns that no natural wound would leave. The blood oath marks. Visible only to shifters, they glowed faintly in the pre-dawn darkness, like chains binding his very soul. 3 years without shifting is killing you. Marcus made his voice softer, but no less urgent. The wolf inside is dying, and you with it. Every veteran knows what the breaking looks like. You cannot hide it forever. Better to die human than live as the beast that failed to save her. The words landed like stones into still water, sending ripples of old pain through the morning air. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, to rail against the twisted logic that had become his alpha's prison. But approaching footsteps silenced him. Both men turned as Brother Thomas emerged from the castle keep, his priestly robes gathering dew from the courtyard stones. My lords. The elderly priest inclined his head respectfully. Forgive the early intrusion, but a royal messenger arrived during the night. He carries urgent summons from the capital. Donovan accepted the sealed parchment, his fingers leaving slight tremors on the wax as he broke the royal seal. Marcus watched his commander's expression shift from weary resignation to something harder, more complex. When Donovan finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of unwanted duty. The king requests my presence at court. There have been incidents, organized attacks by rogue shifters along the northern territories. He believes someone is building an army. Marcus felt his wolf surge forward, battle instincts awakening. How many attacks? 7 villages in 3 months. Coordinated strikes, military precision. The king wants his former Royal Wolf Guard commander to investigate. Donovan's mouth twisted into something that might have been a bitter smile. He does not seem to understand that Commander no longer exists. But he does exist. A new voice joined the conversation, young and determined. All 3 men turned as 8-year-old Eliza Ashford stepped into the courtyard, her small frame wrapped in a wool cloak too large for her shoulders. The daughter of the winter wolf had her father's steel-gray eyes and her late mother's copper hair, a striking combination that made her seem older than her years. "Eliza," Donovan's voice gentled slightly, the only crack in his emotional armor. "You should be sleeping. The sun has not yet risen." "I could not sleep." Eliza moved closer, her bare feet somehow immune to the cold that made grown soldiers shiver. "I heard Captain Marcus speaking, about the wolf dying, about you dying." The words from a child's mouth struck harder than any blade. Marcus saw his alpha flinch, saw the careful walls crack just slightly. Donovan knelt to his daughter's level, though even that movement seemed to cost him effort. Old wounds that should have healed months ago still pulled at his movements. "The captain speaks in metaphor, little one. I am not dying." "But you are." Eliza reached out with a child's terrible honesty and touched the silver streaks in her father's hair. "These were not here last winter, and you move slower now, and you cannot smell when Magda burns the breakfast porridge anymore. The wolf inside you is sick because you locked him away." Marcus exchanged glances with Brother Thomas. The child had shifter blood through her father's line, though she would not gain her own wolf until puberty. But even now, her instincts ran true. She could sense what others might miss, the gradual dissolution of the bond between man and beast that defined shifter existence. Donovan stood, his hand resting briefly on his daughter's hair in a gesture of affection that had become rare over the past 3 years. "You are too wise for 8 years old. You remind me of your mother." "Then listen to me as you would have listened to her." Eliza's voice carried surprising strength. "She would not want you to die slowly. She would want you to live, to hunt, to be the wolf again." The plea hung in the morning air like a prayer. For a moment, Marcus thought he saw something shift in his alpha's expression, a flicker of the man who had once led wolf packs into battle with courage that inspired songs. But then the walls slammed back into place, and Donovan turned away. "I made an oath." His words came quiet but absolute. An oath sworn in blood cannot be broken lightly. Before anyone could respond, the castle bells began their morning toll. Servants would be stirring soon, fires lit, the day's routines beginning. Marcus watched his alpha walk toward the keep, shoulders squared despite the weight he carried. Eliza stood in the courtyard, her young face creased with worry that no child should have to bear. "He will break, Captain Marcus." Eliza's voice came soft but certain. "The oath will break him, or he will break the oath. I pray it is the latter before it is too late." Marcus knelt beside the child who spoke like a seer. "What makes you so certain?" "Because I smell something in the northern forests." Eliza turned her gray eyes toward the mountains beyond Raven's Hollow's walls, where thornwood stretched dark and deep. Something wrong. Blood magic, the kind that calls to wolves even when they do not want to answer. The beta shifter felt cold that had nothing to do with autumn air. Blood magic, dark rituals that perverted the natural order of shifter existence. If such workings had truly taken root in Thornwood, then the king's summons was even more urgent than it appeared. And Donovan, weakened by 3 years without shifting, was in no condition to face such threats. "We must convince him to break the oath." Marcus spoke quietly, aware that even stone walls had ears in castles where politics ran as deep as bloodlines. Before whatever darkness grows in those forests comes calling. Eliza nodded, wisdom beyond her years shining in young eyes. "And I think I know what will give him reason to break his chains." She looked up at the beta captain with something that might have been prophecy or simply the keen instinct of shifter blood. "We must go into the forest, all of us, soon." The child walked back toward the castle, leaving Marcus standing alone in the gray pre-dawn light. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Not one of the castle's pack, but something else. something that carried the echo of dark magic and ancient hunger. Marcus's wolf responded with a low growl of warning. The winter wolf would rise again. One way or another, blood oath or no, the kingdom needed its greatest warrior. Marcus only hoped that when Donovan finally shifted after 3 years of self-imposed exile from his own nature, there would be enough of the man left to control the beast. The day passed in this kind of tense preparation that preceded dangerous missions. Donovan spent hours in his solar poring over maps of Thornwood Forest, marking the locations of reported attacks, searching for patterns in the chaos. 7 villages struck in 3 months, always at night, always when the moon hung dark in the sky. The attackers left few survivors, and those who did survive spoke of wolves that moved wrong, that smelled of corruption and old death. Rogue shifters were not uncommon, men who lost themselves to their beasts, who forgot the discipline that separated warrior from monster. But organized rogues operating with military precision? That spoke of something far more dangerous. Someone was gathering the broken and the violent, forging them into a weapon aimed at the kingdom's heart. Marcus entered the solar without knocking, a privilege earned through years of battlefield brotherhood. I have assembled a patrol, 6 of our best. We ride for Thornwood at dawn. Donovan did not look up from his maps. Acknowledged. You will have operational command. Stay in shifted form when possible. The rogues will have scouts watching the roads. I will not have operational command. Marcus crossed to the desk and placed his hand firmly on the maps, forcing his alpha to meet his eyes. You will. The king summoned you specifically, Donovan. Not me, not any other beta in the kingdom. You. Because he knows what I know, that the winter wolf is the only one who can hunt these shadows. I cannot shift. The words came through gritted teeth, pain and frustration bleeding through the careful control. The blood oath binds me, you know this. Then we break the oath. Marcus leaned forward, urgency making his voice rough. There are ways, ancient rituals. Sister Margaret at the convent studies such things. We could send for her. No. The refusal came absolute and final. I swore over Catherine's grave that I would never shift again. That oath was made in blood and grief and love. I will not dishonor her memory by breaking it. Catherine would not want you to die for her. Marcus played his strongest card, knowing it might cost him his position, or worse, she would want you to live, to protect our daughter, to be the alpha this kingdom needs. Donovan's hand moved to his chest again, to the silver scars that marked him as oathbound. You did not see her face in those final hours. Delirious with fever, she looked at me in wolf form and screamed. She begged me to stay away, her own husband, and she thought I was a monster coming to harm her. The pain in his voice could have cut stone. So yes, Marcus, I swore I would never be that monster again, and I meant it. She did not know what she said. Plague makes people see things that are not there. You know this. But what if she spoke truth? What if some part of her, in those final moments, saw clearly what I am? A beast pretending at civilization. A killer wrapped in the skin of a lord. Perhaps the greatest mercy I can offer is to let that beast die with dignity. Marcus had no answer for that. Pain ran too deep, had festered too long. He straightened, military bearing reasserting itself. Then I request permission to bring your daughter on patrol. She insists she must come, and her instincts have been sharp of late. Absolutely not. Donovan's refusal came instant and sharp. Thornwood is too dangerous. She is 8 years old and already showing signs of pack awareness beyond her years. Marcus pressed his advantage carefully. Catherine taught her the old ways before the plague came. Tracking, reading territory signs, understanding wolf speak. The child needs practical education, not just books and needlework. Something shifted in Donovan's expression. The mention of Catherine teaching their daughter seemed to pierce his armor in ways that direct assault could not. He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the training yard where Eliza practiced archery under the watch commander's instruction. Even from this distance, her natural grace was evident. 3 days. Donovan's voice came quiet. We investigate the northern border, document what we find, and return. Eliza stays within arm's reach at all times, and if we encounter genuine danger, you shift and you run with her. That is an order. Marcus nodded, relief flooding through him. It was not permission to break the blood oath, but it was movement, action. The first step on a long road back to wholeness. Understood, my lord. That night, Eliza came to her father's chambers as he prepared his traveling gear. She wore her mother's old riding cloak, hemmed short for her smaller frame, and her copper hair had been braided in the practical style of women who expected to spend days in the saddle. "I am ready for tomorrow." She announced this with the confidence of youth that had not yet learned to fear the darkness beyond castle walls. Donovan looked at his daughter and saw Catherine's spirit shining through. The same determination, the same refusal to be left behind when duty called. He had taken Catherine on patrols in their early years together, teaching her the ranger skills that later saved her life on more than one occasion. Until plague came, and all the survival skills in the world proved worthless against invisible death. "You will obey Captain Marcus in all things." Donovan knelt to her level, his hands on her small shoulders. "And if I give the order to run, you run. No questions, no hesitation. Do you understand?" "I understand." Eliza studied her father's face with those two wise eyes. "But I do not think we will need to run. I think we will find something in the forest. Something important." "What makes you say that?" "Because I dreamed of Mama last night." Eliza's voice dropped to barely a whisper, as though sharing sacred secrets. She stood in moonlight that came from inside her, and she said that a woman needs saving. She said you would know what to do when the time came. Donovan felt ice slide down his spine. Catherine had possessed minor precognitive gifts, dreams that sometimes showed truth before it manifested. If such abilities had passed to their daughter, it would explain the child's uncanny instincts. But it also meant the trip to Thornwood carried significance beyond a simple patrol. What else did she say? "That the wolf is not your curse." Eliza reached up and touched the spot on her father's chest, where blood oath scars lay hidden beneath fabric. "It is your salvation. And hers, whoever she is." The child left, and Donovan stood alone in his chambers with the weight of prophecy pressing down like storm clouds. He moved to the window and stared out at the northern mountains, where Thornwood sprawled dark and deep. Somewhere in those forests, something waited. Someone waited. And whether he willed it or not, fate was turning wheels that would force him to confront the oath that had become his prison. The wolf inside stirred for the first time in months, a faint scratching against the bars of its cage. Not breaking free, not yet, but aware. Awakening slowly from 3 years of forced hibernation. Donovan pressed his hand to his chest and felt the silver scars burn hot with warning. Blood oath or no, something was coming. And when it arrived, he would have to choose. Between the vow he made to a dead woman and the duty he owed to the living. Between the man he had become and the wolf he once was. Between slow death by inches and the terrifying possibility of actually living again. Dawn came cold and gray, with frost turning the castle's stone walls to crystal. The patrol assembled in the main courtyard as servants loaded supplies and stable hands brought out horses for those who would ride rather than run in wolf form. Donovan wore traveling leathers, reinforced with light chain at chest and shoulders, practical armor for forest work. His sword hung at his hip, the blade that had taken enemy heads in a dozen campaigns, now reduced to ornament since he could no longer fight as his wolf brothers did. Marcus approached in full tactical gear, his second skin worn by men who lived more in war than peace. "The patrol is ready. 4 betas, including myself, 2 younger wolves for scout work, all experienced hunters. We should make the forest edge by midday." Eliza emerged from the keep dressed in practical travel clothes, her bow slung across her small back and her mother's old hunting knife at her belt. Magda, the castle's healer and grandmother to half the guard, fussed over the child's cloak clasp while muttering prayers to the Moon Mother. The old woman's eyes found Donovan's, and he saw accusation there. She blamed him for bringing his daughter into danger. Perhaps she was right. Brother Thomas appeared to offer blessings, his weathered hands making signs of warding over each member of the patrol. When he came to Donovan, the priest paused and spoke too quietly for others to hear. "Lady Catherine came to me in dreams last night. I know you do not believe in such things, my lord, but I must speak truth. She said the oath you swore was made in grief and misunderstanding. She said to tell you that she never feared the wolf, only the plague, only death." Donovan felt something crack in his chest. The priest's words struck at the very foundation of the prison he had built around his heart. But 3 years of careful construction could not crumble in a moment, no matter how much he might wish it otherwise. Thank you, brother, but dreams are only dreams. The old priest shook his head sadly. Sometimes dreams are the only way the dead can reach us, Lord Ashford. Perhaps you should listen. The patrol rode out as morning sun broke through clouds, painting the world in shades of gold and gray. They took the northern road that wound up into foothills, following the trade route that connected Ravens Hollow to the smaller villages beyond. Farms gave way to wilder lands, and cultivated fields surrendered to forests that had never known plow or seed. Donovan rode at the column's head with Marcus beside him and Eliza between them, her smaller horse keeping pace with the practiced ease of a child raised in the saddle. The 4 beta shifters ranged ahead and behind in loose formation, their wolves riding close to the surface. In their presence, Donovan felt the absence of his own beast like a missing limb. They stopped at midday to water horses and eat cold rations. While the others tended practical matters, Eliza wandered to the forest edge and stood with her head tilted, listening to something only she could hear. Donovan followed, concerned by the intensity of her focus. What is it? Something wrong in these trees. Eliza's young voice carried absolute certainty. Old blood, recent death, and magic that tastes like metal and smoke. Marcus joined them, his wolf senses confirming what the child detected. She is right. The forest ahead stinks of dark workings, ritual magic, the kind that requires sacrifice. How far? Donovan felt tactical instincts awakening despite 3 years of rust. 2 miles, perhaps 3. The beta pointed deeper into Thornwood, where the canopy grew thick enough to block noon sun. There is a clearing. I can smell burned earth and spilled blood from here. Then we investigate on foot. Donovan began issuing orders with the ease of long practice. Horses stay here with 2 guards. The rest of us advance in skirmish formation. Eliza stays between Marcus and myself at all times. The forest closed around them like a fist, sunlight reduced to scattered fragments that barely penetrated the canopy overhead. Ancient oaks twisted upward with bark dark as charcoal, their roots breaking through earth in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. The air tasted wrong here, metallic and sharp with the tang of corrupted magic. They found the first ritual site within the hour. A clearing perhaps 30 feet across, the ground scorched black in patterns that formed symbols older than the kingdom itself. At the circle's center stood a crude altar built from stacked stones, its surface stained dark with old blood. Animal bones lay scattered around the perimeter, arranged in ways that suggested purpose rather than random death. Marcus shifted partially, allowing his wolf senses to dominate while maintaining human form. His eyes blazed amber as he read the signs that others might miss. 3 days old, maybe 4. They killed here at new moon. Goats, chickens, something larger. The magic stinks of binding and summoning. Binding what? Donovan circled the clearing's edge, careful not to disturb the ritual patterns. If rogues needed dark magic to enhance their strength, it suggested a level of organization and resources beyond simple bandits. Wolves! One of the scout betas called from the clearing's far side. Come see this. They found the cages half hidden in underbrush, iron constructions built to hold creatures far larger than any natural wolf. The metal bars showed scorch marks where something had tested them with heat or magic. Dried blood crusted the ground beneath each cage, and the smell of fear hung thick enough to taste. They are capturing shifters! Marcus's voice went flat with the kind of rage that only came from personal violation, forcing them through some kind of ritual, breaking them, remaking them into something else. Eliza tugged at her father's sleeve, her face pale beneath her copper hair. Papa, look at the altar stone. There are more marks than just animal blood. Donovan moved closer, and what he saw turned his stomach. Among the dark stains left by lesser sacrifices were handprints, human handprints, small ones. The implications hit like a physical blow. They are experimenting. Donovan forced the words through clenched teeth, testing their rituals on anything they can capture. Animals first, then moving to people, building towards something larger, or someone larger. Marcus's amber eyes met his alpha's gray ones. If they can force a transformation or bind a wolf's will, they could create an army that does not need to fear silver or sacred ground. An army of corrupted shifters with none of the weaknesses and all of the strength. The tactical implications crashed down like an avalanche. Such a force could tear through the kingdom's defenses like paper, especially if the crown's own shifter warriors proved vulnerable to whatever magic had been worked here. The 7 village raids suddenly took on new context. Not simple banditry, but test runs. proving grounds for an army in development. We need to find the source. Donovan began moving deeper into the forest, following intuition and the faint paths left by those who had come before. If they are still operating in this region, there will be a central location, somewhere they can work larger rituals without detection. My lord, perhaps we should return to the castle. Bring more soldiers. The youngest beta spoke nervously, his inexperience showing. This is beyond our patrol strength. No. The word came from Eliza, who stood with her small hand pressed against the scorched earth. They are close, and there is someone who needs help, someone dying. How can you know this? Donovan knelt beside his daughter, concern overriding tactical considerations. Because I can feel her. Eliza's eyes had gone distant, unfocused in the way that suggested her mother's prophetic gifts were manifesting. She is in pain, surrounded by silver chains and dying light. She tried to stop them, broke their circle, and now they hunt her. We must hurry, Papa. Please. The plea in his daughter's voice decided matters. Donovan stood and gestured for the patrol to form up. We advance carefully. Combat formations. If we find survivors, we extract and return to Raven's Hollow. If we find the enemy, we observe and document for a larger response. But we do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Understood? The affirmatives came quick and professional. These were veteran soldiers, men who trusted their commander's judgment, even when that commander had not hunted in 3 years. They moved deeper into Thornwood with weapons drawn and senses extended, following the trail that Eliza's instincts laid out before them. The forest grew darker as they advanced, the wrongness intensifying until even the humans among them felt it pressing against their souls. Birds did not sing here. Small animals fled at their approach. The very earth seemed to recoil from footsteps that disturbed ground tainted by dark magic. They found her in a hollow beneath the roots of a massive oak, her body curled into a defensive ball that spoke of pain and desperate flight. Lady Seraphina Whitmore, though they did not know her name yet, lay dying in autumn leaves with silver burns across her wrists and throat. Her expensive traveling gown hung in tatters, and blood matted her auburn hair where she had been struck during her escape. Eliza reached her first, the child's small hands already searching for wounds with the instinctive care her mother had taught her. Papa, she is still breathing, but there is silver poison in her blood. We must help her. Donovan pushed through the patrol and knelt beside the dying woman, his healer's training from years of battlefield medicine taking over. The silver burns told their own story. She had been restrained with chains meant for shifters, though her scent marked her as fully human, which meant she was valuable to whoever worked the dark rituals, valuable enough to imprison with tools designed to hold creatures far more dangerous than any normal person. Can we move her? Marcus crouched on the woman's other side, his wolf already reading signs that human senses might miss. The silver is killing her. Donovan examined the burns with growing alarm. They run deep, poisoning her blood. She needs a healer immediately, and even then her chances are poor. Then we carry her to Magda. Marcus made it sound simple, though they both knew the journey back to Raven's Hollow would take hours at best. Papa! Eliza's voice cut through tactical discussion with the certainty of prophecy. You have to save her, please. This is why Mama sent us here. This is why the wolf has to wake up. What are you talking about? But even as Donovan asked the question, something shifted inside his chest. The woman's eyes fluttered open, revealing green irises clouded with pain and approaching death. And in that moment, she looked directly at him. The world seemed to stop. Time stretched and compressed simultaneously. Donovan felt something he had not experienced in 3 years, something he thought had died with Catherine. The wolf inside him, the beast he had caged with blood oath and grief and stubborn will, suddenly surged against its chains with desperate strength. She is dying. The wolf's voice echoed through his mind like thunder after 3 years of silence. Our mate is dying. We must save her. No! Donovan tried to slam the mental barriers back into place. She is not our mate. Catherine was our mate. Catherine is dead. Catherine was beloved. The wolf's response came with surprising clarity despite years without communication. This one is fated. Chosen by powers older than our grief. Can you not feel it? And Donovan could. Against all logic, against 3 years of carefully constructed walls, he felt the pull. The recognition that shifters called mate bond, the supernatural connection that transcended choice or reason. This dying woman with silver burns and secrets in her blood was somehow tied to him at a level deeper than conscious thought. The blood oath scars on his chest erupted in searing pain. Silver fire traced through his veins as the magic that bound his wolf recognized what was happening. The oath had been clear. Never again would he shift. Never again would he allow the beast to walk the world. But the oath had not anticipated this, had not prepared for the possibility that his wolf might find a second mate. "Papa, please!" Eliza's small hands gripped his arm with surprising strength. "Don't let her die. Not here in the cold, not alone. Be the wolf again. Save her." The child's plea shattered the last of his resistance. Donovan looked at his daughter's face, so like her mother's, so full of faith that he could fix this. And he looked at the dying woman who smelled of moon magic and desperate courage. A woman who had somehow destroyed dark rituals at great personal cost. A woman his wolf recognized as mate. "Marcus, get her on a litter. We run for Raven's Hollow. Now!" Donovan began stripping off his jerkin, his hands moving to buckles and clasps with the speed of old habit. "My lord, even at best speed it will take hours. She will not survive the journey." Marcus spoke gently but truthfully. "Then I will make her survive." Donovan felt the decision crystallize like ice in winter. He pressed both hands to his chest, where blood oath scars burned like brands. 3 years. 3 years of slow death, of caging the fundamental part of himself, of believing that Catherine's fever dreams spoke truth when they had only been plague speaking through the woman he loved. The oath had to break, or they would all die in this cursed forest. Donovan Ashford, alpha of Raven's Hollow, survivor of 100 battles and widower of 3 years, closed his eyes and reached for the wolf that had been caged since his world shattered. He expected resistance, expected the blood oath to fight him every step of the way. What he did not expect was for the wolf to meet him halfway with such desperate eagerness that it felt like coming home after a lifetime of exile. The shift began, and with it the blood oath shattered like ice beneath a hammer blow. Pain beyond description tore through Donovan's body as silver chains that had bound his wolf for 3 years disintegrated. The magic released all at once, a surge of power that had been compressed and denied for so long that it exploded outward like a breaking dam. His bones began to reshape themselves, muscles tearing and reforming, skin rippling as white fur erupted across his body. But something was wrong. The shift that had once been as natural as breathing now felt like being torn apart from the inside. 3 years without practice, 3 years of forcing the wolf down, had consequences. The transformation stuttered and stalled halfway. Donovan collapsed to the forest floor, his body caught between man and beast, neither one nor the other. Agony screamed through every nerve. The wolf howled inside his mind, desperate to break free, but unable to complete what had been started. Blood oath magic, even shattered, left scars that ran too deep. The bindings were gone, but the damage remained. "My lord!" Marcus was beside him instantly, hands on his alpha's convulsing form. "The oath breaking. It is too much too fast. Help her!" The words barely made it past Donovan's reshaping throat, caught between human speech and wolf's growl. "Save her." Eliza pressed close to her father's agonized form, tears streaming down her young face. "Do not leave me, Papa. Please. You promised. You promised Mama you would take care of me." Through the red haze of transformation pain, Donovan felt small hands on his face, felt his daughter's tears falling hot against fur and skin, and beneath it all, he felt the dying woman's presence like a beacon in darkness, the mate bond pulling at him, demanding he survive, demanding he protect, demanding he be the wolf he was born to be. The winter wolf had 3 choices in that moment. He could surrender to the pain and let both man and beast die here in the cursed forest. He could fight the shift and force himself back to human form, preserving what remained of his life, but losing any chance to save the dying mate. Or he could push through the agony, accept the damage the oath had done, and become the wolf again regardless of what it cost him. Donovan thought of Catherine's last words, filtered now through Brother Thomas's revelation. She had not feared the wolf. Only the plague. Only death. 3 years of grief had been built on misunderstanding. 3 years of self-imposed exile from his own nature based on fever dreams and guilt that had no foundation in truth. He thought of Eliza, who needed a father that lived rather than a ghost who merely existed. He thought of his pack, slowly weakening as their alpha deteriorated. He thought of the kingdom that needed its winter wolf to face whatever darkness gathered in these corrupted forests. And he thought of the dying woman whose name he did not know, whose face he had barely seen, but whose soul called to his wolf with a power that transcended reason. With a roar that was half human scream and half wolf's howl, Donovan Ashford forced the transformation to complete. Bones snapped into new configurations, muscles stretched and reformed, fur erupted like snow across expanding frame, and where a man had been, now stood the winter wolf. White as fallen snow, silver blue eyes blazing with 3 years of compressed power, larger than any wolf had right to be, standing tall enough at the shoulder to look a mounted soldier in the eye. Scars from 100 battles marked his hide, visible even through thick fur. And around his throat, a collar of silver scars glowed faintly in the forest shadows, remnants of the blood oath, visible proof of what he had sacrificed and what he had endured. The wolf looked at his daughter with eyes that held human intelligence and animal instinct in perfect balance. A soft whine escaped his throat, reassurance that the man still existed within the beast. Eliza threw her arms around the massive neck and buried her face in white fur. "You came back," the child whispered into his ruff. The wolf came back. Marcus and the patrol stared in awe at their alpha's return. 3 years. 3 years they had waited for this moment. The beta shifter knelt in a gesture of respect and submission, acknowledging the dominance that rolled off the winter wolf in waves. "My alpha." Marcus's voice carried the weight of pack bonds reforging themselves, stronger than ever. "Welcome back to the hunt." But there was no time for reunion or celebration. The dying woman's heartbeat fluttered weak and irregular in the wolf's enhanced hearing. Donovan moved to her side, and his wolf's instincts took over where human skill reached its limits. He nosed at her silver burns, and something remarkable happened. Where his fur brushed against the poisoned wounds, the silver's corruption began to fade, not healing completely, but stabilizing. The mate bond worked both ways. His presence, his wolf's magic, called to something dormant in her blood, something that responded to the touch of a fated mate. Seraphina's eyes opened again, clearer this time. She looked up at the massive white wolf looming over her and showed no fear, only recognition. Only the bone-deep certainty of someone who knew they had been found by exactly who was meant to find them. "Winter wolf," her voice came barely a whisper. "The prophecies said you would come." Then she fainted, and Donovan carefully, gently, took the scruff of her torn gown in his massive jaws and lifted. The patrol formed around them, protecting their alpha and his miraculous burden, and together they ran through Thornwood Forest, racing against death and destiny, carrying a dying woman who held secrets that would change everything. The winter wolf had returned, the blood oath was broken, and nothing in the kingdom would ever be the same again. The winter wolf ran through Thornwood Forest like a ghost given form, white fur blending with patches of snow that clung to shadowed hollows. His massive paws struck earth in perfect rhythm, eating distance with the effortless lope of a predator born to hunt across vast territories. 3 years of forced hibernation had not dulled his wolf's instincts. If anything, the compressed power now exploded outward with intensity that surprised even him. Behind him, Marcus and the patrol struggled to keep pace. The betas shifted mid-stride, their wolves smaller than their alphas, but still formidable. They flanked the white wolf in protective formation, aware that their commander carried precious cargo between his jaws. The dying woman hung limp from his gentle grip, her torn gown bunched in teeth that could crush bone but held her as carefully as a mother wolf might carry her pup. Eliza rode on Marcus's broad back, her small fingers buried in his gray fur. The child had never ridden a shifted wolf before, but necessity bred courage. Her young face pressed against the beta's ruff, feeling the powerful muscles bunch and release beneath her. The speed terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. They burst from Thornwood's edge as afternoon sun painted the world in shades of amber and gold. The open ground between Forest and Raven's Hollow stretched before them like a promise. 2 miles. 2 miles of exposed terrain where enemy scouts might spot them, where the dying woman's heartbeat grew fainter with each passing moment, where every second counted in ways that made Donovan's wolf howl with frustration. The castle's watchmen saw them coming from half a mile out. The great bells began to toll in alarm, their bronze voices carrying across valley and hilltop. To castle folk, the sight must have seemed pulled from legend or nightmare. A massive white wolf, larger than any natural beast, racing toward them with a woman hanging from his jaws. Behind him, a pack of shifted warriors in full battle formation. But those who had served long enough recognized the distinctive white fur, recognized the silver-blue eyes and the battle scars visible even at distance. Word spread through Raven's Hollow faster than wildfire. The winter wolf had returned. After 3 years of self-imposed exile, their alpha hunted once more. Donovan did not slow as he approached the main gates. The portcullis stood open, guards scrambling aside as the massive wolf thundered through into the courtyard. Servants scattered, horses reared in their stables, responding to the primal presence of apex predator. The wolf ignored all distractions, focused entirely on reaching the castle keep and the healer's chambers within. Magda waited in the courtyard, the old woman's healer instincts already preparing her for emergency. She had served Raven's Hollow for 40 years, had tended wounds from battlefield and training yard, had delivered babies and eased dying soldiers into their final rest. Nothing surprised her anymore, but the sight of her lord in wolf form, something she had not witnessed since Lady Catherine's death, brought tears to weathered eyes. "Bring her to my workroom." Magda's voice cut through the chaos with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed in medical matters. "Quickly now, the silver poisoning is advanced." Donovan shifted as he climbed the keep's stone stairs, the transformation flowing more smoothly now that the wolf had remembered how to dance with the man. By the time he reached Magda's chambers, he wore human form once more, naked as birth and covered in the residue of transformation, but human. He laid Seraphina on the healer's table with hands that trembled from more than simple exertion. "Silver burns, deep ones." Donovan's voice came rough, his throat still adjusting to human speech after 3 years of silence from his wolf. "She has been restrained with chains meant for shifters. The poison runs through her blood." Magda bent over the unconscious woman, her experienced hands already cataloging injuries and measuring chances of survival. The old healer's face remained impassive, but Donovan had known her long enough to read the worry in her eyes. She worked in silence, applying poultices and preparing drafts that would draw poison from blood. Brother Thomas appeared to offer prayers, his priestly presence a comfort even to those who questioned faith. Marcus entered after shifting and dressing, Eliza held carefully in his arms. The child's face showed the exhaustion of someone pushed beyond their limits, but her eyes remained fixed on the dying woman, on the stranger who had somehow called the wolf back from its cage. "Will she live?" Eliza asked the question all of them were thinking. Magda did not look up from her work. "That depends on many things, child, on whether the silver has reached her heart, on whether her will to survive outweighs the poison's will to kill, on whether the Moon Mother sees fit to grant mercy this day. She will live." Donovan spoke with absolute certainty that came from somewhere deeper than logic. The mate bond hummed between them like a plucked string, faint but present. As long as that connection remained, some part of him would know if she passed beyond reach. "I will not lose her." Marcus and Magda exchanged glances heavy with meaning. Both recognized the significance of those words coming from a man who had spent 3 years in grief's prison. Both understood that something fundamental had shifted when the blood oath shattered and the wolf returned. "My lord?" Marcus cleared his throat carefully. "Perhaps you should rest. You have not shifted in 3 years. The toll on your body will be severe." "I am fine." The lie came automatic but unconvincing. In truth, Donovan felt as though he had been beaten with iron bars and dragged behind horses. Every muscle screamed. His bones ached with the deep pain that came from transformation after too long dormant. But he would not leave this room, not while his mate fought for life on the healer's table. "Stubborn as stone, that one," Magda muttered as she worked. "Just like his lady wife." Catherine would not leave his side when he took fever after the border wars. Sat vigil for 6 days until the crisis passed. Seems fitting he returns the devotion. The mention of Catherine's name no longer cut quite so deep. The truth revealed by Brother Thomas, confirmed by his own wolf's wisdom, had changed the shape of his grief. She had not rejected the beast, had not died fearing her own husband. 3 years of torment built on misunderstanding and plague-induced delirium. 3 years of unnecessary exile from his own nature. Eliza climbed onto a stool beside the healer's table, her small hand reaching out to touch Seraphina's unmarred fingers. The child's wolf instincts, still developing but already strong, seemed drawn to the unconscious woman in ways that transcended normal curiosity. She smells like moonlight and old magic. Eliza spoke with the matter-of-fact certainty that children possessed before society taught them to doubt their perceptions. Like the stories Mama used to tell about the Moon Priestesses who blessed the first shifters. Marcus's wolf stirred at those words, recognition flickering in amber eyes. Moon Priestess bloodlines were thought extinct, wiped out during the purges a century past when fear of magic had driven good men to terrible deeds. But if this woman carried such heritage, it would explain much. The silver's attraction to her blood, the dark ritual's focus on her capture, the way Donovan's wolf had recognized her as mate despite never meeting her before. Brother Thomas moved closer, his scholarly interest piqued. "May I examine her hands?" Magda nodded permission, and the priest gently lifted Seraphina's right palm. There, faint but present, traced patterns that ordinary eyes might miss, markings that responded to moonlight filtering through the chamber's high windows. The old priest's breath caught. "Moon Mother preserve us. These are consecration marks, faded but genuine. This woman has been blessed by powers that predate the kingdom itself." The implications crashed down like an avalanche. If Victor Thornwell had discovered a living Moon Priestess descendant, his dark rituals took on new and terrifying dimensions. Such bloodlines held power over shifter magic itself, the ability to bless or curse transformations, to heal silver poisoning or inflict it, to bind wolves or set them free. Donovan looked down at the woman who had somehow become central to everything. To his wolf's return, to dark plots in cursed forests, to prophecies spoken by his dead wife and living daughter. Her auburn hair spread across the pillow like autumn leaves. Her face, even pale with approaching death, held beauty that transcended simple physical attraction. She looked like someone who had faced darkness and refused to yield. "Who are you?" He whispered the question to her unconscious form. "And why did you destroy their ritual?" The answer came not from the woman, but from Marcus, who had been organizing reports from the patrol. "My lord, we found this in her clothing." The beta held out a small leather journal, its pages water-stained and blood-marked but still legible. Donovan accepted the journal with hands that had steadied after transformation's aftermath. He opened to the first page and read words written in elegant script. "Property of Lady Seraphina Whitmore, daughter of Lord Edmund Whitmore of Whitmore Hall." The name struck like lightning. Whitmore, one of the oldest bloodlines in the Northern Territories, descended from the original Moon Priestess orders before the purges scattered their kind. Lord Edmund had died 2 years past, his estates and titles claimed by distant cousins. His daughter had been engaged to Victor Thornwell in an arrangement meant to solidify political alliances. Engaged to Victor Thornwell. The words turned Donovan's blood to ice. Victor, who even now gathered rogue shifters in Thornwood. Victor, whose dark rituals required Moon Priestess blood to achieve whatever twisted goals he pursued. Victor, who was distantly related to the Ashford line through old blood feuds and ancient hatreds. "We need to send word to the king immediately." Marcus spoke what they all were thinking. If Thornwell has been conducting these experiments to create an army of corrupted shifters, and if he needs this woman to complete his ritual, he will come for her. "Let him come!" Donovan felt his wolf surge forward, protective instincts overwhelming tactical caution. Raven's Hollow has never surrendered its guests to those who would harm them. It will not start now. "My lord, be reasonable. We are talking about a rogue alpha with access to dark magic and possibly dozens of corrupted warriors." Marcus pressed carefully. "Our garrison is strong, but against such forces without proper preparation, we might not hold. Then we prepare." Donovan moved to the window that overlooked his domain. Raven's Hollow sat astride the only mountain pass for 50 miles in either direction. Its walls had withstood siege engines and dragon fire in ages past. If Victor wanted the woman Donovan's wolf had claimed as mate, he would have to take her from the winter wolf's teeth, and that was something no enemy had ever managed. Brother Thomas cleared his throat gently. "Perhaps, my lord, we should consider what Lady Seraphina would choose when she wakes, if indeed she wakes. She may have family, obligations, preferences of her own. If she wakes," Donovan corrected quietly, "she will choose her own path. But while she lies vulnerable in my castle, under my protection, I will not surrender her to the monster who did this." He gestured to the silver burns, to the evidence of captivity and torture. No woman deserves such treatment, especially not one whose only crime was interfering with dark magic. 3 days passed in careful vigil. Magda worked tirelessly to draw the silver poison from Seraphina's blood, applying poultices that smelled of bitter herbs and ancient remedies. Brother Thomas offered prayers at every hour. Eliza refused to leave the sick room for more than brief meals, her young presence somehow comforting to the unconscious woman. Donovan found himself drawn to the healer's chambers at odd hours, checking on his mate's progress with frequency that made Marcus raise knowing eyebrows. The transformation back to wolf form had left him weakened, but healing rapidly. His body remembered the dance between man and beast now, and each shift grew smoother than the last. On the third evening, as sunset painted the chamber's windows in shades of rose and gold, Seraphina's fever finally broke. Her eyes opened slowly, green and bright with returning awareness rather than delirium. She looked around the unfamiliar room with the wariness of someone who had learned to trust nothing and no one. Her gaze found Donovan standing by the window, and something shifted in her expression. "You!" Her voice came barely a whisper, raw and damaged. "The White Wolf. You are real. I thought perhaps fever dreams had conjured you. I am real." Donovan moved to the table's side, aware of how he must appear. A strange man in borrowed clothing, scarred and dangerous, looming over her in an unfamiliar castle. He gentled his voice in ways that military command had not required in many years. "You are safe here. I am Lord Donovan Ashford of Raven's Hollow. This is Magda, my healer, and Brother Thomas, our priest. You were found dying in Thornwood Forest." "I remember." Seraphina's hand moved unconsciously to her throat, where silver burns formed collar patterns. "I destroyed their ritual circle, the one they had spent weeks preparing. Victor was furious. He sent his wolves to hunt me." "Victor Thornwell? You know him." It was statement, not question. She read truth in Donovan's expression. "Of course you do. Everyone in the Northern Territories knows Lord Thornwell. Respectable, powerful, utterly merciless beneath his civilized facade. He is your betrothed." Donovan kept his voice neutral despite the rage building in his chest. "The journal lists you as engaged to marry him." Seraphina laughed, and the sound held no humor, only bitter recognition of fate's cruel jokes. "I was contracted to marry him, yes. A political arrangement made by my father before he died. But I discovered what Victor truly is, what he plans. I could not allow myself to become part of his darkness." "What does he plan?" "To create an army of shifters bound to his will." Seraphina struggled to sit up despite Magda's protests. Her green eyes blazed with intensity that fever could not diminish. He found old texts describing how Moon Priestess blood could be used in corruption rituals, how it could bind wolves to human commands, strip away their free will, turn them into perfect soldiers who know no fear or mercy or doubt. Marcus swore quietly in the language of soldiers who had seen too much war. Such an army would be unstoppable. No shifter could stand against their own kind twisted into weapons without conscience. He tried the ritual twice before. Seraphina's voice dropped to barely audible. On his previous wives, both died in the attempt. The magic requires willing participation from the priestess bloodline. When they refused, when they fought the binding, the ritual consumed them, burned them from inside until nothing remained but ash and screaming. The horror of it settled over the room like winter frost. Donovan felt his wolf snarl with rage at the thought of anyone subjecting women to such torment. That Victor planned the same fate for Seraphina, that he had chained her and prepared her for ritual sacrifice, ignited protective fury that transcended rational thought. "You destroyed his ritual circle." Donovan spoke gently, recognizing courage when he saw it. "You escaped and ran. How long were you in the forest?" 4 days, maybe 5. Time becomes strange when you are dying." Seraphina looked down at her silver-burned wrists. "I knew he would catch me eventually. The poison was spreading. I could feel it turning my blood to ice, but I could not let him use me to hurt innocent people, could not let my bloodline become the key to his atrocities. You are safe now. Eliza spoke up from her stool, her young voice fierce with determination. My father is the Winter Wolf, the greatest alpha in the kingdom. He will protect you from the bad man. Seraphina's gaze found the child, and something in her expression softened. You are very brave to believe in such protection, little one. But Victor has resources beyond normal reckoning, dark magic and corrupted wolves and political power that reaches into the king's own court. No single alpha, however great, can stand against all that. Then he will not stand alone. Marcus stepped forward, his presence solid and reassuring. Raven's Hollow's garrison stands with our alpha, as do the loyal packs throughout the northern territories. Thornwell may have gathered rogues and outcasts, but we have honor and brotherhood and 3 centuries of tactical experience defending these mountains. You do not understand what you face. Seraphina shook her head, wincing at the pain the movement caused. Victor is not simply a rogue lord playing at dark magic. He is a fallen alpha. He killed the true alpha of his father's pack and stole the rank through treachery. The corruption runs bone deep. The revelation sent shock through the assembled group. Killing an alpha to steal rank was among the most serious crimes in shifter society. Such men became abominations, their wolves twisted by guilt and stolen power. They could shift, but the transformation inevitably drove them toward greater darkness, toward the very corruption Victor now embraced through ritual magic. How do you know this? Donovan asked carefully. Because he told me. Seraphina's laugh held the edge of hysteria barely controlled. He bragged about it during my captivity. How he murdered Alpha Roderick in his sleep. How he made it look like natural causes. How his father, the Earl, suspects but cannot prove the crime. Victor believes himself untouchable, believes he is destiny's chosen instrument to reshape the shifter world. Then he will learn differently. Donovan felt cold certainty settle over him like familiar armor. I broke a blood oath today to save your life, shattered 3 years of self-imposed exile to bring you home. If Victor Thornwell wants to test the Winter Wolf's resolve, he will find it as unyielding as these mountains. Seraphina studied him with eyes that had learned to read men's hearts through necessity and pain. You do not even know me. Why would you risk so much for a stranger? Because you are not a stranger. The words came before Donovan could reconsider their wisdom. My wolf knows you, recognized you the moment we found you dying in those cursed woods. Whatever you are to me, whatever fate or prophecy or simple chance brought you to this place, I will not abandon you to the monster who burned your flesh and murdered his own kin. The mate bond hummed between them, visible to shifter senses as a silver thread connecting their souls. Marcus saw it and bowed his head in recognition. Magda felt it and smiled with the satisfaction of someone who had witnessed such miracles before. Even Brother Thomas sensed the supernatural connection and made the sign of blessing. But Seraphina only looked confused. I do not understand. You speak as though we are bound somehow, but I am human. I carry priestess bloodline, yes, but I cannot shift. I am no wolf's mate. The bond cares nothing for logic or reason. Marcus spoke gently, offering explanation when his alpha seemed struck temporarily speechless. When a shifter finds their true mate, the recognition comes from sources deeper than conscious thought. Your souls knew each other before your minds met. This is the old magic, the kind that predates kingdoms and creates legends. Seraphina looked at Donovan with new understanding and something that might have been fear. You are saying I am fated to you? That some cosmic force has decided my future without consultation? I am saying that my wolf recognized you as mate. Donovan chose his words carefully, aware that this woman had just escaped one man who viewed her as property to be claimed. But I am also saying that you choose your own path. The bond may exist, but acting upon it requires consent from both parties. You owe me nothing. You are free to leave when Magda declares you well enough to travel. And if I choose to stay? The question came so quietly that only shifter hearing caught it. Then we prepare for what comes next. Together. As allies, if not as mates. As two people who refuse to let Victor Thornwell's darkness consume innocent lives. Seraphina closed her eyes, exhaustion finally overwhelming even her formidable will. I destroyed his ritual circle, but the components can be replaced. He will come, And when he does, he will bring fire and blood and corruption in numbers you cannot imagine. Let him come, Donovan repeated his earlier declaration, this time as formal vow. Raven's Hollow has never surrendered its guests. It will not start now. Rest, Lady Seraphina. Heal, and when you wake, we will plan how to face the storm together. The woman slipped into healing sleep, her breathing steadier now that Magda's medicines had begun to counter the silver poison. The old healer shooed everyone from the room except for one assistant, declaring that her patient needed rest more than visitors. The group dispersed to their various duties, leaving Donovan alone in the corridor with his daughter and his second. Eliza looked up at her father with eyes too wise for 8 years. You love her already, not like you loved Mama, but differently, the wolf way. Donovan knelt to his daughter's level, aware that this conversation would shape their relationship for years to come. I loved your mother with my whole heart. That love does not diminish simply because she is gone. But yes, the wolf recognizes Lady Seraphina as mate. Whether that recognition grows into the kind of love your mother and I shared remains to be seen. Will you marry her? The child's directness would have been amusing under different circumstances. If she survives, if she chooses to stay, if we defeat Victor and his corrupted wolves, if 100 other complications resolve themselves, then perhaps. But Eliza, I need you to understand something important. Donovan cupped his daughter's face gently. No one will ever replace your mother. Seraphina is not meant to. She is someone new, someone different, someone who might become part of our family if fate allows. I know. Eliza hugged her father fiercely. Mama told me in dreams. She said you would find someone who needed saving. She said to help you be brave enough to save her. So I did. The weight of prophecy and his late wife's continued influence from beyond death settled over Donovan like familiar chainmail. Catherine had possessed minor precognitive gifts, dreams that sometimes showed truth before it manifested. That such abilities had passed to their daughter seemed both blessing and burden. Marcus cleared his throat carefully. My lord, we must discuss defense preparations. If Thornwell truly means to attack, we have perhaps days before he gathers sufficient forces. Agreed. Donovan stood, military training reasserting itself over emotional complexity. Summon the senior officers. We plan for siege. The War Council assembled in Raven's Hollow's strategy room as evening painted the mountains in shades of purple and gray. Maps covered every surface, showing the territories surrounding the castle and the various approaches an enemy might take. Senior betas stood alongside human officers, their combined experience representing over 2 centuries of tactical knowledge. Donovan studied the terrain with eyes that had planned campaigns across 3 kingdoms. Raven's Hollow sat astride a narrow mountain pass, the only viable route for armies moving between northern and southern territories. Cliffs rose sheer on either side, making flanking maneuvers nearly impossible. The castle's walls had been built by engineers who understood that properly positioned stone could turn 100 defenders into a force capable of withstanding thousands. But Victor's threat came not from conventional warfare, but from corrupted magic and shifter abilities that cared nothing for walls or fortifications. Captain Marcus. Donovan addressed his second formally in the presence of subordinates. Assessment of our current strength. Marcus stepped forward with the confidence of a career soldier, delivering reports he had given 1,000 times. Garrison strength stands at 48 soldiers, including 12 shifters capable of combat in wolf form. Provisions sufficient for 3 months under siege conditions. Walls in good repair. Defensive positions established at all major approaches. Weakness assessment? Donovan pressed, knowing that understanding vulnerability was crucial to survival. We lack ranged capability against aerial approach. Marcus indicated areas on the map. If Thornwell has access to flying shifters, eagles, or hawks, they could bypass our strongest defenses. Additionally, our numbers are thin if he brings the rumored corrupted wolf packs. Reports suggest he may command 50 or more rogues. The numbers told a grim story. Even the winter wolf at full strength could not hold against such odds if the enemy committed to total assault. They needed advantages beyond simple defense. They needed to force Victor into fighting on terms that negated his numerical superiority. We must draw him to ground of our choosing. Donovan began marking positions on the map. The pass narrows here, 3 miles north of the castle. Cliffs on both sides create a natural choke point. If we can force engagement there, his numbers become liability rather than strength, assuming he is foolish enough to accept such obvious baiting. One of the human officers spoke carefully. By all accounts, Thornwell is skilled tactician. He will recognize the trap. Then we offer bait too valuable to refuse. Donovan met his officer's eyes steadily. We let word spread that Lady Seraphina has awakened and will be transferred to royal custody within the week, that we plan to move her under light escort through the northern pass. Victor believes he needs her alive for his rituals. He will take the bait. You mean to use her as lure? Marcus asked carefully, knowing this suggestion walked dangerous ground given the mate bond. I mean to use the appearance of vulnerability to draw the enemy into terrain where our tactical advantages can compensate for their numbers. Donovan's voice carried the cold certainty of a commander who had made harder choices in the past. Lady Seraphina will be safely within these walls while we engage Thornwell's forces in the pass. He will discover the deception only after committing to the attack. The plan had merit, but it also had risks. If Victor saw through the ruse, he might instead lay siege to Raven's Hollow itself. A prolonged siege would eventually favor the side with greater numbers and resources. But it also bought time for royal reinforcements to arrive, time for Seraphina to heal fully, time to plan more permanent solutions to the Thornwell threat. What of the dark rituals? Brother Thomas had joined the council as spiritual advisor. If Victor's corruption magic is as powerful as Lady Seraphina suggests, our soldiers may face wolves whose strength exceeds natural limits. Then we counter with our own advantages. Donovan gestured to Marcus. Our alpha has returned. The pack fights as one unified force rather than disparate rogues held together by fear and dark magic. Brotherhood is stronger than any corruption. The officers nodded, taking confidence from their commander's certainty. They had followed the Winter Wolf through campaigns that seemed unwinnable before. They would follow him again, even against enemies that defied natural law. The council continued deep into the night, refining strategies and establishing contingencies for various scenarios. By the time the meeting adjourned, Raven's Hollow stood ready to face whatever darkness approached from the north. Ready, but not unafraid. Even veterans knew that confidence and preparation could not eliminate all risk. Some battles came down to courage and fortune in equal measure. Donovan walked the battlements as midnight approached, his wolf restless beneath his skin. 3 years without shifting had left him hungry for the transformation. Now that the Blood Oath's chains had shattered, his wolf wanted to run, to hunt, to mark territory and challenge any who threatened pack or mate. You brood like a man facing execution rather than battle, Sister Margaret's voice came from the shadows near the North Tower. Donovan turned to find Catherine's elder sister regarding him with knowing eyes. The nun had arrived during the War Council, summoned by Brother Thomas after Seraphina's identity became clear. Sister Margaret. Donovan inclined his head respectfully. Thank you for coming so quickly. When Brother Thomas sends word that the Winter Wolf has returned and mate bonds are forming and dark magic threatens the kingdom, I come. Margaret moved to stand beside him at the battlements, her robes stirring in the night wind. Also, Catherine visits my dreams with annoying frequency. She wants me to ensure you do not do anything stupidly heroic. Stupidly heroic is my specialty. Donovan managed a slight smile. So I have heard. Margaret studied him with the penetrating gaze of someone accustomed to reading souls. You broke the blood oath. I had no choice. The mate was dying. There is always choice. That you chose correctly does not diminish the courage required. Margaret reached out and touched the spot over Donovan's heart, where silver scars glowed faintly beneath his shirt. The oath damaged you. The breaking damaged you further. You hide it well, but I can see the cost. I will heal. Donovan tried to sound confident. Perhaps. Or perhaps you will require help healing. Margaret produced a small leather-bound book from her robes. I brought texts on blood oath recovery and on mate bonds between shifters and Moon Priestess bloodlines. The connection is rare, but not unprecedented. What do the texts say? That such bonds can be exceptionally powerful. That the priestess bloodline responds to alpha energy in ways that transcend normal shifter magic. Margaret opened the book to pages marked with careful notation. That your mate may be able to heal the damage the oath caused, if she chooses to embrace her heritage rather than fear it. Seraphina does not know the full extent of her abilities. Donovan spoke quietly. She views herself as simply human with unfortunate bloodline. Then she must learn. Margaret closed the book and fixed Donovan with stern expression. Because when Victor Thornwell comes, and he will come, the battle will not be won through tactics and steel alone. It will require magic to counter magic, corruption to be burned away by consecration. Your mate holds power she does not yet understand, power that could save this castle and everyone in it, or destroy them if misused. How do we help her understand? We teach her. I teach her. Margaret's voice softened slightly. I was Moon Priestess before I became nun. I know the old ways, the blessings and bindings, the healing and the warding. If Seraphina is willing, I can help her remember what her bloodline has forgotten. And if she refuses? If she fears the power too much to embrace it? Then we fight with what we have and pray it proves sufficient. Margaret turned to leave, then paused. Donovan, Catherine loved you fiercely, loved you enough that even death could not sever the bond entirely. She sends dreams and visions to those who can receive them because she wants you to be happy, to live fully, to love again without guilt, shadowing every moment, honor her memory by accepting the gift she helped arrange. What gift? The gift of second chances. Margaret disappeared into the tower stairwell, leaving Donovan alone with his thoughts and his restless wolf. He stood on the battlements until dawn began to paint the eastern sky in shades of rose and gold. Somewhere in the north, Victor Thornwell gathered his forces for the conflict to come. Somewhere in the castle below, Seraphina slept and healed, and unknowingly held the fate of kingdoms in her Moon Priestess blood. And somewhere between past and future, between grief and hope, between duty and desire, Donovan searched for the courage to accept what Catherine's final gift truly meant. The winter wolf had returned, but the man still had much to learn about living rather than simply surviving. 3 days passed in intensive preparation. The castle transformed into fortress, every defensive position reinforced, every weapon sharpened, every soldier drilled until their movements became instinct rather than thought. Marcus coordinated patrol rotations that kept scouts watching every approach to Raven's Hollow. Any sign of Victor's forces would trigger warnings that gave precious minutes for final preparations. Seraphina recovered faster than any patient Magda had treated before. The silver poison that should have killed her gradually faded under the healer's care, and something else. Something none of them spoke of, but all recognized. The mate bond channeled strength from Donovan to Seraphina, his alpha vitality somehow feeding her healing process. Sister Margaret began teaching the reluctant student about her Moon Priestess heritage. The lessons took place in Raven's Hollow's small chapel, where ancient stones still held traces of consecration magic from centuries past. Seraphina proved intelligent but resistant, viewing her abilities as curse rather than gift. Donovan found himself drawn to these lessons, though he tried to maintain respectful distance. The mate bond pulled him toward Seraphina with increasing strength as she healed. His wolf wanted to claim her, to mark her, to establish the connection beyond any doubt. But the man held firm to his promise. She would choose her own path. On the third evening, he entered the chapel to find Seraphina alone. Margaret had departed to consult ancient texts in the castle's library, leaving her student to practice meditation techniques meant to awaken dormant abilities. Seraphina sat in silver moonlight that streamed through high windows, and for a moment she seemed to glow with inner radiance. You should not be out of bed. Donovan spoke softly to avoid startling her. I have spent 3 days in that bed. Seraphina opened her eyes, and in the moonlight they appeared almost luminescent. I needed to move, to breathe air that does not smell of sickness and medicine. Magda will be displeased if she finds you here. Then we shall not tell her. Seraphina smiled, and Donovan felt his heart stutter at the transformation. This was the first genuine smile he had seen from her, unencumbered by pain or fear. It changed her entire face, revealing the woman she might have been if darkness had not marked her path. He moved to sit on this bench opposite her, maintaining the careful distance that respect demanded. How go the lessons with Sister Margaret? Frustrating. Seraphina's smile faded slightly. She speaks of powers I do not possess, abilities that feel like fairy tales rather than practical skills. I am no sorceress, Lord Ashford. I am simply a woman who happened to be born with unfortunate bloodline. Donovan is sufficient. We need not stand on formality given the circumstances. He studied her carefully, noting how color had returned to her cheeks and strength to her movements. And you are more than you believe. I felt it when my wolf recognized you, potential waiting to be awakened. Your wolf? Serafina looked at him with curious intensity. Tell me about that. About being two beings in one body. How does it feel? Like breathing. Like the most natural thing in the world when I allow it. Like torture when I deny it. Donovan searched for words to explain what most shifters took for granted. The wolf is not separate from me. It is me. My instincts and nature given form. When I shift, I do not become someone else. I become more myself. But you denied it for 3 years. The blood oath Sister Margaret speaks of. Why would you cage something so fundamental? Because I believed my wolf had failed the person I loved most. Donovan's voice dropped to barely audible. Because in grief, we often punish ourselves for things beyond our control. Because 3 years ago, I was not wise enough to understand that denying my nature helped no one and harmed everyone. Yet you broke the oath to save me, a stranger. Not a stranger. Donovan met her luminous eyes steadily. My wolf knew you, knows you. Whatever that recognition means, it was powerful enough to shatter chains I had thought unbreakable. The mate bond. Serafina spoke the words carefully, testing their weight. Sister Margaret explained the concept. That shifter souls sometimes recognize their perfect complement in another, that such bonds transcend choice or logic. The bond exists. Donovan acknowledged what both of them felt humming in the air between them, but acting upon it requires choice from both parties. You are under no obligation, no pressure. I meant what I said. You are free to leave when you are healed. And if I do not wish to leave? The question came quietly, vulnerability showing through careful control. Then we explore what the bond means. Together. At whatever pace feels right. Donovan allowed himself to lean slightly forward, drawn by her presence like metal to lodestone. I will not rush you, will not claim what is not freely given, but I also will not lie and pretend I do not feel the pull. I feel it too, Serafina admitted with obvious reluctance. I tell myself it is gratitude. You saved my life, gave me sanctuary, prepared to fight Victor on my behalf. Of course I would feel drawn to such protection, but the pull predates logic. I felt it even in delirium. Even dying in the forest, some part of me knew you were coming. Then we face it honestly, as two people caught in circumstances neither expected nor initially chose. Donovan extended his hand across the space between them, palm up, an offering rather than demand. We have time to understand what this bond means, to decide what we want it to become. Serafina looked at his offered hand for a long moment. Then slowly, carefully, she placed her palm against his. The contact sent shock through both of them, the mate bond flaring bright enough that even human eyes might have seen the silver glow. Warmth spread from the point of connection, healing and wholeness flowing between them in ways that transcended simple touch. Sister Margaret says I could heal the damage the blood oath caused. Serafina spoke softly, her hand still pressed to Donovan's. That Moon Priestess magic responds to mate bonds, that if I embraced my heritage, I could ease the pain you carry from breaking the chains. You should not feel obligated to use abilities you are still learning to control. But I want to. The admission came with surprising strength. You broke yourself to save me. The least I can do is try to mend what was damaged. Before Donovan could protest, Serafina closed her eyes and called upon instincts she barely understood. The chapel's moonlight seemed to concentrate around her, growing brighter until it illuminated the entire space. Her hand against his began to glow with silver-white radiance that pulsed in time with both their heartbeats. Donovan felt power flow into him through their connection. It sought out the scars the blood oath had left, the damage caused by 3 years of denying his wolf, the cracks that breaking the chains had inflicted. And slowly, carefully, with a gentleness that brought tears to his eyes, Serafina's awakening magic began to heal what had seemed beyond repair. The process took minutes that felt like hours. When it finally ended, when the silver light faded and the chapel returned to normal illumination, Donovan felt whole in ways he had not experienced since before Catherine's death. The constant ache that had become his companion vanished. The weakness that 3 years without shifting had caused evaporated. He felt strong, vital, alive. Thank you. The words seemed insufficient for what she had given him. You are welcome. Seraphina swayed slightly, exhausted by the effort. "Sister Margaret will be pleased? That was apparently my first successful application of priestess magic. Then you should rest before attempting any others." Donovan stood and offered his hand to help her rise. This time the contact felt different, still electric with mate bond energy, but also comfortable. Right, like two pieces of a puzzle discovering they fit together perfectly. He walked her back to the healer's chambers, neither speaking, but both acutely aware of the shift that had occurred between them. The bond had moved from recognition to something deeper. Not love yet, but the foundation upon which love might build if given time and nurturing. At the chamber door, Seraphina paused and looked up at him. "Tomorrow, Sister Margaret says I should attempt a larger working, creating a ward around the castle that would weaken any corruption magic brought against it. She believes I am ready." "Are you?" "I do not know." Fear flickered in her eyes. "What if I fail? What if my power proves insufficient when it matters most? Then we fight with what we have. But Seraphina, you have already proven your courage. You destroyed Victor's ritual knowing he would hunt you. You ran through cursed forests rather than submit to being used for evil. Whatever happens, you are not defined by success or failure of magic. You are defined by your choices." The words seemed to comfort her. She smiled once more, that transformative expression that made Donovan's heart stumble. "Sleep well, Donovan Ashford, and thank you for everything." She slipped into her chambers, and Donovan stood in the corridor with the weight of approaching conflict settling over him like armor. Tomorrow, Seraphina would attempt to ward the castle, and soon after, Victor would come with his corrupted wolves and dark ambitions. The Winter Wolf would face his greatest challenge, not against external enemies, but against the darkness that threatened to consume everything he had begun to hope for. He returned to the battlements and stared north toward Thornwood. "Come soon, Victor Thornwell. Come test yourself against the Winter Wolf and see what happens when you threaten what an alpha has claimed as his own." The challenge echoed across the mountains like a howl, and somewhere in the darkness, something howled back. Dawn broke over Raven's Hollow with the kind of crystalline clarity that preceded storms. The air tasted sharp, electric with tension, that made even the castle's stones seem to hold their breath. Donovan stood in the courtyard, watching Seraphina attempt the warding ritual that might determine whether they survived the coming conflict. Sister Margaret had arranged the sacred circle according to patterns that predated the kingdom itself. Salt and silver dust marked the boundaries, while candles placed at cardinal points flickered despite the morning's stillness. At the circle's center, Seraphina knelt in white robes that made her seem almost ethereal in the gray light. Her auburn hair hung loose down her back, and moonstone crystals woven through the strands caught what little sun penetrated the cloud cover. The entire garrison had assembled to witness this working. Soldiers lined the battlements, servants crowded doorways and windows. Even the horses in their stables seemed to sense the significance of the moment. If Seraphina succeeded in creating a protective ward around the castle, Victor's corruption magic would find itself weakened within these walls. If she failed, they would face the coming battle with no supernatural defenses beyond what Donovan's wolf could provide. "She is afraid." Eliza stood beside her father, her small hand gripping his larger one tightly. "I can smell it on her. The same fear Mama had before she died, fear of not being enough. Then we must have faith enough for both of us." Donovan squeezed his daughter's hand gently. "Lady Seraphina has already proven her courage by destroying Victor's ritual. This is simply another test. She will not fail. But what if she does? Then we adapt. We fight with what we have rather than what we wish we had. That is what soldiers do, little one. We face reality without flinching and find ways to win regardless." Sister Margaret began the invocation, her voice carrying across the courtyard in syllables that belonged to languages older than human memory. The words resonated with power that made shifter wolves stir restlessly beneath their human skins. Ancient magic responding to ancient calls. Seraphina rose from her kneeling position, arms extended to either side, palms up as though offering herself to forces beyond mortal comprehension. She began to glow, faintly at first, barely visible in daylight, but growing stronger with each passing heartbeat. Silver-white radiance emanated from her skin, concentrating in the moonstone crystals woven through her hair until they blazed like captured stars. The mate bond between Donovan and Seraphina suddenly pulled taut, a connection he had not realized existed until it activated. He felt her drawing power through their link, using his alpha strength to fuel magic that her inexperience could not yet sustain alone. The sensation was not unpleasant, more like sharing breath or synchronizing heartbeats. Two beings becoming temporarily one for a purpose greater than either individual. Marcus moved closer to his alpha, amber eyes tracking the energy flows that human vision could not detect. "She channels your strength, my lord. The bond allows it. This is how Moon Priestesses of old blessed entire armies before battle. They drew power from their mated alphas and amplified it through their own magic." Donovan felt the drain begin in earnest. Not painful, but definitely present. Like running a marathon, his energy flowing out through the mate bond to feed Seraphina's working. He braced himself and consciously opened the connection wider, offering everything she needed. His wolf surged forward in support, adding its primal strength to her refined magic. Seraphina's glow intensified until looking directly at her became difficult. The light spread outward from her position, flowing across the courtyard stones like luminous water. Where it touched, reality seemed to shimmer and solidify simultaneously. The air grew thicker, heavier, charged with protective magic that would recognize corruption and burn it away like morning sun dispelling shadow. The ward expanded in concentric circles, climbing walls and towers, seeping into stone and mortar, claiming every inch of Raven's Hollow as consecrated ground. The process took perhaps 10 minutes, though time seemed to stretch and compress strangely while the magic worked. When it finally completed, when the last traces of silver light faded into the castle's fabric, Seraphina collapsed. Donovan was moving before conscious thought registered. He crossed the courtyard in seconds and caught her before she hit stone, cradling her against his chest as her eyes fluttered with exhaustion. Around them, the garrison erupted in cheers. The ward had held. Raven's Hollow now stood protected by magic that would weaken any corruption brought against it. "Did it work?" Seraphina's voice came barely a whisper, her face pale but eyes bright with hope. "See for yourself." Donovan turned slightly so she could observe the reactions. Every shifter in the courtyard stood straighter, their wolves responding to the ward's presence. The very air felt cleaner, sharper, as though some invisible taint had been scrubbed away. "I did it," wonder filled her voice. "I actually created a ward. Sister Margaret said it would take months to develop such skill. You had motivation, and you had your mate's strength to draw upon." Donovan carried her toward the keep, ignoring the knowing smiles from soldiers who witnessed their alpha's protective tenderness. "Rest now. You have earned it. But Victor will come soon. We must prepare." "We are prepared. And you have done more than anyone could reasonably ask. The rest falls to warriors, and we know our work well." He brought her to chambers that had been prepared adjacent to his own. Not presumption, Marcus had insisted, but practicality. The mate bond would allow her to draw strength from proximity even while she slept. Donovan laid her on the bed and drew blankets over her trembling form. The working had drained her completely. "Sleep, Seraphina. When you wake, the battle will likely have begun, but you will wake in a castle protected by your magic. That is victory enough." Her hand caught his as he turned to leave. "Stay, just for a moment. I do not wish to be alone." Donovan settled into the chair beside her bed, his hand still clasped in hers. Within minutes, her breathing evened into sleep's rhythm. He should have risen then, should have returned to tactical preparations and last-minute defense coordination. But something kept him anchored in that chair, watching her sleep, feeling the mate bond pulse gently between them. This was what he had denied himself for 3 years. Not just companionship or physical presence, but connection. The simple, profound intimacy of being needed and choosing to stay. Catherine would have approved, he realized, would have been pleased that he found the courage to open his heart again rather than letting it ossify into permanent winter. "Papa!" Eliza's voice came from the doorway, barely disturbing the room's peaceful atmosphere. "The scouts have returned. Captain Marcus says Victor's forces were spotted 5 miles north. They move slowly, in full formation. Then we have time to prepare properly." Donovan gently released Seraphina's hand and stood. Tell Marcus I am coming. And Eliza, stay with Lady Seraphina when the fighting starts. She will need friendly presence when she wakes. I will protect her." The child spoke with absolute certainty. "She is pack now. We protect our pack." The words from his 8-year-old daughter carried more wisdom than most adults achieved in lifetimes. "Yes, little one, we protect our pack. Always." 2 days of tense preparation followed. The scouts tracked Victor's approach with military precision, reporting his forces' steady advance through the northern territories. 60 wolves moving in organized formation, their scent carrying the unmistakable taint of corruption magic. They would reach Raven's Hollow by the 3rd dawn. The War Council assembled that evening for strategic planning as shadows lengthened across the castle walls. The scouts' reports painted a grim picture. Victor approached with approximately 60 wolves, a mix of rogues and corrupted shifters whose scent carried the taint of dark magic. They moved in organized formation, suggesting military discipline rather than simple bandit mentality. And at their head rode Victor Thornwell himself, fallen alpha and architect of atrocities. "They will reach the castle at dawn on the 3rd day." Marcus indicated positions on the map where enemy forces had been spotted. "They make no attempt at stealth. This is meant to be overwhelming show of force. He wants us to surrender Seraphina without fight." Donovan studied the tactical situation with the cold assessment of someone who had commanded armies. 60 wolves against our 12 shifters and 40 human soldiers. He believes the numbers guarantee his victory. In open battle, he would be correct. One of the senior officers spoke grimly. "Even with our alpha returned, those odds are nearly impossible, which is why we do not give him open battle." Donovan began marking positions on the map with decisive strokes. "We use the choke point strategy. Force him into the northern pass where numbers become liability. Hit him with prepared positions and coordinated strikes. Make him bleed for every foot of ground. My lord, he may simply lay siege rather than commit to disadvantageous terrain." Marcus raised the obvious concern. "He will not." Donovan's certainty came from understanding his enemy's psychology. Victor's pride will not allow him to sit outside these walls while the woman he needs for his rituals remains beyond reach. He will commit to assault because his arrogance demands it. We simply ensure that when he does, he finds himself trapped in a kill zone. The plan was refined over the next 2 days. Shifted scouts would monitor Victor's approach and fall back through prepared positions. Archers would be stationed at key points along the pass where the cliffs provided natural cover. The 12 combat-capable shifters would form the mobile response force, striking where needed and withdrawing before the enemy could bring superior numbers to bear. And Donovan himself would be the bait. The Winter Wolf standing alone in the pass, challenging Victor to single combat, alpha against fallen alpha, with the castle and its precious cargo as the stakes. Victor's ego would not allow him to refuse such challenge, and once engaged, his forces would commit to supporting their leader, flowing into the trap that Raven's Hollow's defenders had prepared. It was a dangerous plan, risky, built on assumptions about enemy psychology that might prove incorrect, but it was also the best chance they had against forces that outnumbered them 5-1. The council adjourned to make final preparations. Soldiers checked weapons and armor. Shifters ran through transformation drills, ensuring they could shift smoothly under combat stress. Archers positioned themselves at designated points with arrows that had been blessed by Brother Thomas and tipped with silver from the castle's treasury. Donovan returned to his chambers to don the armor that had not seen use in 3 years. The leather and chain fit differently now, both because his body had changed during his self-imposed exile and because the man wearing it had transformed in ways that went beyond physical. He was no longer the grief-stricken lord who had sworn never to shift again. He was the Winter Wolf returned, with a mate to protect and a pack that needed him to be the alpha he was born to be. Sister Margaret appeared as he finished buckling his sword belt. She carried something wrapped in white silk, and her expression held the gravity of someone about to impart significant knowledge. "Before you go to face Victor, you must understand what you truly fight." The nun unwrapped the silk to reveal an ancient text, its pages yellowed with age but its words still clear. "This is from the Royal Archives. Records of the original Moon Priestess purges." "Why show me this now?" "Because Victor's plan is more dangerous than simple army building." Margaret opened the book to a marked page. "The corruption rituals he uses do not just bind wolves to his will, they create an infection. a spiritual disease that spreads through pack bonds. If he manages to corrupt enough shifters, the contagion could spread throughout the kingdom's wolf population. How do we stop such infection? The same way infection has always been stopped. Cut it out at the source. Margaret fixed Donovan with intense stare. Victor is the disease's heart. While he lives, the corruption spreads. You must kill him, Donovan, not defeat, not force to yield. Kill, completely and permanently. The gravity of that pronouncement settled over him like winter frost. Trial by combat usually ended in submission rather than death. Honor codes among shifters valued life even in victory. But Margaret was right. Victor had murdered an alpha to steal rank, had sacrificed women in dark rituals, had corrupted sacred magic for twisted purposes. He had forfeited any claim to mercy or honor. I understand. Donovan closed the book gently. And I will do what must be done. Catherine would have said the same thing. Margaret's expression softened slightly. She never hesitated when hard choices needed making. Protect Seraphina. Protect your pack. Protect the kingdom, whatever the cost to your own soul. The nun departed, and Donovan stood alone with the weight of impending violence pressing down on him. He had killed before. War demanded such actions from those who commanded soldiers. But this felt different, more personal, more significant. He would face Victor not just as enemy combatant, but as the monster who had tortured his mate and threatened everything Donovan had begun to rebuild. The wolf inside stirred with anticipation. It remembered battle, remembered the clarity that came in combat when all complexity reduced to simple imperatives. Survive, protect, destroy threats. The wolf did not trouble itself with mercy or honor codes. It understood only that Victor threatened the mate, and anything threatening the mate must die. My lord, Marcus appeared in the doorway. Victor's forces have reached the pass entrance. He sends a herald requesting parley. Of course he does. Donovan gathered his weapons with practiced efficiency. He wants to make grand speeches and demonstrate his power. Very well, we shall give him his theater, but on our terms. They walked to the castle's main gates where the entire garrison had assembled. Donovan paused to look at the faces around him. Soldiers he had trained. Warriors who had followed him through campaigns across 3 kingdoms. Men and women who trusted him to lead them through this crucible. He would not fail them. The gates opened, and the winter wolf walked out to meet his destiny. The northern pass stretched before Donovan like a gray stone corridor carved by ancient glaciers. Cliffs rose sheer on either side, their faces marked with centuries of wind and weather. The pass narrowed in places to barely 20 feet across, while in others it widened to allow larger forces to maneuver. Raven's Hollow's defenders had chosen their ground well. This terrain negated numerical advantage and rewarded tactical discipline. Victor's forces filled the pass entrance like a dark tide. 60 wolves in various stages of shift, some fully transformed, others maintaining hybrid forms that allowed both speech and combat capability. At their head stood Victor Thornwell himself, and even at this distance, Donovan could see the corruption that marked him. Victor had shifted to hybrid form, standing 7 feet tall with massive shoulders and arms corded with unnatural muscle. His fur was black as midnight, but red veins pulsed through it like living fire. His eyes glowed crimson, reflecting the dark magic that sustained him. And around his neck hung a collar of human finger bones, trophies from the women he had sacrificed in his failed rituals. The fallen alpha's voice carried clearly across the distance between them, magically amplified to ensure every defender heard his words. Lord Donovan Ashford, the winter wolf returns from 3 years of hiding. How convenient that you emerge just as I come to reclaim what belongs to me. Nothing here belongs to you, Victor. Donovan kept his voice level, refusing to rise to obvious baiting. You come to Raven's Hollow uninvited and with hostile force. State your business or depart. My business is simple. Victor spread his arms in mock reasonable gesture. You harbor a woman contracted to marry me. A woman who stole property from my estates and destroyed valuable equipment. Return her to face justice, and I will withdraw peacefully. The woman you speak of is under my protection, and we both know your interest has nothing to do with marriage or justice. Donovan let edge creep into his tone. You want her for your corruption rituals, to sacrifice as you sacrificed your previous wives, to fuel dark magic that violates everything shifter society holds sacred. Bold accusations from a wolf who spent 3 years refusing to shift. Victor's smile held no warmth. "Tell me, Ashford, does it hurt? Breaking the blood oath you swore over your dead wife's grave? Does her ghost weep to see you betray her memory so quickly?" The words were designed to wound, to shake Donovan's confidence before combat began, but they struck against armor that 3 years of grief had already tested to breaking. Catherine did not weep. She sent dreams and visions guiding me to the woman I was meant to save. My late wife's final gift was teaching me that love does not end with death, and opening my heart again honors her memory rather than betraying it. Victor's expression darkened at the failure of his psychological attack. "Pretty words. Let us see if your claws are as sharp as your tongue. I challenge you, Donovan Ashford. Alpha to alpha. Single combat for stakes that include the woman, your castle, and your pack's submission." The formal challenge hung in the air like drawn steel. Every wolf in the pass felt the weight of it, the old magic that governed such contests rising to acknowledge proper invocation. Donovan had expected this, had planned for it. Victor's arrogance demanded he prove himself superior to the legendary winter wolf. Now that pride would become his downfall. "I accept your challenge." Donovan began walking forward, closing the distance between himself and his enemy. "But I name additional terms. When I defeat you, your corrupted wolves are disbanded and returned to proper packs for rehabilitation. Your dark magic ends. Your plots against the kingdom cease. Agreed?" "Agreed." Victor's confidence suggested he saw no possibility of defeat. "And when I defeat you, I claim not just the woman but your daughter as well. A child with strong bloodline will prove useful for future workings." The threat against Eliza ignited rage that Donovan channeled into cold focus. Victor had made his final mistake. Threatening a wolf's mate was dangerous. Threatening his cub was suicidal. "Then let us begin." Donovan shifted as he spoke, the transformation flowing smooth and powerful. Where a man had stood, now the winter wolf emerged in full glory. White fur rippled across expanding frame as bones reformed and muscles restructured themselves. He rose to stand at shoulder height with a mounted warhorse, massive and terrible in his beauty. Silver blue eyes blazed with intelligence and fury in equal measure. Battle scars marked his hide, visible proof of conflicts survived and enemies defeated. And around his throat, the silver scars from the broken blood oath glowed faintly, reminders of chains shattered and freedom reclaimed. The assembled wolves, both defenders and attackers, felt the weight of true alpha presence. This was no fallen pretender sustained by stolen rank and dark magic. This was genuine dominance earned through courage and skill, and the kind of leadership that inspired absolute loyalty. Even Victor's corrupted forces felt it, their wolves responding instinctively to the command in the winter wolf's bearing. Victor shifted fully in response, revealing the extent of his corruption. His wolf form stood slightly smaller than Donovan's, but the dark magic compensated with unnatural enhancements. Muscles too large, claws too long, teeth stained red with power drawn from sacrificed innocence. He was strong, perhaps even stronger than the winter wolf in pure physical terms. But strength alone did not win battles between alphas. The combat began without further ceremony. Victor lunged forward with speed that belied his massive size, jaws snapping at the winter wolf's throat. Donovan sidestepped smoothly, his 3 years without practice forgotten as muscle memory reasserted itself. He raked claws across Victor's exposed flank, drawing first blood. The corrupted alpha howled in rage and pain. He spun with surprising agility and launched a renewed assault, this time using the dark magic that sustained him. Red light blazed from his eyes and mouth, corruption given visible form. Where the light touched stone, it left scorch marks. Where it touched the cliff faces, it caused rock to crack and crumble. Donovan felt the ward Seraphina had placed around Raven's Hollow extend its protection even into the pass. The corruption magic weakened slightly when it encountered the Moon Priestess blessing, buying crucial seconds for the winter wolf to avoid attacks that might have proven fatal. They clashed again and again, two massive wolves tearing at each other with fang and claw. Victor fought with berserk fury, enhanced by dark magic. Donovan fought with tactical precision, honed through decades of warfare. Where Victor sought to overwhelm through brute force, the winter wolf used terrain and timing to negate numerical advantages in strength. Blood stained white fur and black alike. Both combatants bore wounds that would have killed ordinary wolves, but alphas possessed endurance beyond normal limits, and the magic each carried sustained them through injuries that should have ended the fight. Marcus watched from his position on the cliff face above, ready to signal the ambush that would trap Victor's forces once they committed fully to supporting their leader. He saw his alpha moving with the deadly grace that had earned the Winter Wolf title, saw Victor's increasing frustration as strength failed to produce victory, saw the moment when the fallen alpha decided to cheat. Victor howled a command in the corrupted tongue that dark magic spoke. 20 of his wolves surged forward, abandoning any pretense of honorable single combat. They would overwhelm the Winter Wolf through numbers. Honor be damned. Now! Marcus roared the order that triggered the trap. Archers rose from concealment along the cliff faces. Silver-tipped arrows flew in coordinated volleys, striking the charging wolves with devastating accuracy. Shifters could survive normal arrows, even survive silver in small doses. But blessed silver fired by expert archers into vulnerable targets proved lethal. Half of Victor's charging reinforcements fell before they closed the distance. The survivors found themselves facing not just the Winter Wolf, but Raven's Hollow's entire shifted force emerging from prepared positions. Marcus led the charge, his gray wolf form tearing into corrupted enemies with veteran skill. The other betas followed, and suddenly the pass became chaos of fur and fang and desperate violence. Victor realized too late that he had committed his forces to disadvantageous terrain against prepared defenses. The numerical advantage he had counted on became liability as his wolves crowded into the narrow space, getting in each other's way and limiting their ability to maneuver. Raven's Hollow's defenders used the confusion to devastating effect, striking from multiple directions and withdrawing before concentrated counterattacks could form. But the fallen alpha still had dark magic to draw upon. Victor raised his massive head and howled words that made reality shudder. The corruption he carried exploded outward in a wave of red fire that burned friend and foe alike. His own wolves screamed as the magic consumed them, sacrificing them to fuel one final desperate working. The spell sought to bind every shifter in the pass, to force them into submission through sheer magical domination. Victor would claim them all as his corrupted slaves, would add their strength to his own, would become something more than alpha, something monstrous and unstoppable. Seraphina woke in her chambers to the sound of distant combat and the feeling of her mate in mortal danger. The bond between them screamed warnings that transcended physical distance. Donovan needed her, needed the power she had only begun to understand. She rose despite exhaustion, despite Sister Margaret's protests, despite every reasonable voice suggesting she was too weak to help. The mate bond pulled her toward the battle like a compass pointing north. She ran through the castle corridors, bare feet flying over stone, the white robes from her morning ritual streaming behind her like wings. Eliza ran beside her, the child's wolf instincts understanding what her young mind could not quite articulate. They emerged onto the battlements overlooking the northern pass, and Seraphina saw the nightmare unfolding below. Victor's corruption magic spreading like plague, reaching for her mate, preparing to bind and break the Winter Wolf the way he had broken so many others. No! The word came from her depths, from the Moon Priestess bloodline that remembered how to fight such darkness. She would not lose him, not after finding the courage to accept the mate bond, not after beginning to believe that happiness might be possible again. Seraphina raised her hands toward the pass and called upon every trace of power Sister Margaret's teachings had awakened. She called upon the mate bond that connected her to Donovan. She called upon the ward she had woven around Raven's Hollow. She called upon the Moon Mother herself, the ancient power that had blessed the first shifters and given them dominion over transformation. Silver-white light exploded from Seraphina's position with force that shook the castle's foundations. It poured down into the pass like liquid starlight, seeking out Victor's corruption and burning it away. Where red met silver, reality screamed. Two fundamentally opposed magics clashed in contest that would determine far more than a single battle's outcome. Donovan felt Seraphina's power wash over him, felt the mate bond open fully for the first time, felt her pouring everything she had into protecting him and his wolves. The corruption magic that had been reaching for his soul suddenly recoiled, unable to penetrate the blessing his mate provided. Victor howled in frustrated rage as his final gambit failed. The spell he had sacrificed his own warriors to fuel proved insufficient against the power of a true Moon Priestess fighting for her fated mate. His crimson eyes found Seraphina's distant figure on the battlements, and pure hatred twisted his corrupted features. "If I cannot have you, then no one shall." Victor gathered what remained of his dark magic for one last desperate strike. Not against Donovan, not against the defenders, against Seraphina herself. He would kill her even if it cost him everything, even if it meant his own destruction. The bolt of corruption magic screamed across the distance between pass and castle, seeking the woman who had destroyed his rituals and denied him his prize. It was everything Victor had left. All his stolen power, all his dark ambitions, all his murderous hatred compressed into a single killing curse. Donovan saw the attack launched, saw the red fire streaking toward his mate, saw that she was too exhausted from her own working to defend herself. The winter wolf moved without thought, purely on instinct and the primal imperative that mates must be protected at any cost. He leaped, impossibly high, using strength he did not know he possessed, powered by the mate bond and desperate love and the refusal to lose someone precious again. The winter wolf intercepted Victor's curse in mid-flight, his massive body serving as shield between the attack and his mate. The corruption magic struck him with force that would have vaporized a normal wolf. It burned through fur and flesh, seeking his heart, trying to destroy him from within. But it encountered something unexpected. The silver scars from the broken blood oath, the marks that proved he had already survived being torn apart by competing magics, somehow absorbed and dissipated the worst of the curse. Donovan fell, crashed back to the pass floor with impact that cracked stone, lay stunned and burning while his wolf fought to heal damage that went beyond simple physical wounds. The corruption tried to take root, tried to break him as it had broken so many others. "Papa!" Eliza's scream carried clearly over the battle's chaos. "No." Seraphina's voice held command that made reality pause to listen. "I will not lose you." The mate bond flared one final time. Seraphina reached down through the connection and into Donovan's damaged body. She found the corruption trying to take root and burned it out with Moon Priestess fire. She found his wolf struggling to maintain cohesion and surrounded it with healing magic. She found his heart, his soul, the essential core of who Donovan Ashford was, and she wrapped it in silver-white protection that nothing could penetrate. Heal. The command came from mate and priestess combined. You will not die here. You will not leave us. Heal. And impossible though it seemed, Donovan's body obeyed. The corruption burned away. The wounds began closing. The winter wolf stirred and rose, his eyes blazing brighter than before. Not just silver blue now, but touched with white fire that reflected his mate's blessing. Victor saw his curse fail and his last hope die. The fallen Alpha stood alone in the pass, his forces dead or fleeing, his power expended, facing an enemy he could not defeat. For the first time in years, Victor Thornwell knew fear. The winter wolf advanced with terrible purpose, each step deliberate, each movement promising violence. This was no longer trial by combat. This was execution. Victor tried to run, turned and fled deeper into the pass, seeking escape from judgment. But there was nowhere to go. The cliffs rose sheer on either side. The pass led only deeper into mountains where no help awaited, and behind him came the winter wolf, relentless as winter itself, unstoppable as falling snow. They came together one final time in a section of the pass where shadows gathered thick. Victor fought with the desperation of someone who knew death approached. The winter wolf fought with the cold certainty of a predator that had already won. Their combat was brief, brutal, inevitable. Donovan's jaws closed around Victor's throat. He felt the corrupted Alpha's pulse beating frantically against his teeth, felt the moment of decision, kill or show mercy, end it permanently or allow the possibility of future threat. He thought of the women Victor had sacrificed, of the wolves he had corrupted, of the threat he had posed to Seraphina and Eliza and everyone under Donovan's protection. Sister Margaret's words echoed in his memory. Cut it out at the source. The winter wolf's jaws closed. Victor's pulse stopped. The fallen Alpha died as he had lived, alone, unmourned, consumed by the darkness he had embraced so willingly. When Donovan released the body and stepped back, he felt no triumph, only grim satisfaction that a necessary task had been completed. Victor's corruption magic died with him, the red light fading from the pass until only clean mountain air remained. The surviving rogues, freed from their forced binding by Victor's death, fled into the mountains. Some would find redemption in proper packs, others would remain outlaws, but the organized threat they had represented died with their leader. Raven's Hollow's defenders gathered in the pass, tending their wounded and counting their dead. They had lost 5 soldiers, 3 humans, and 2 shifters, the price of victory measured in friends who would never return home. Donovan mourned them with the special grief reserved for commanders who sent soldiers into battle, knowing not all would survive. Marcus approached his alpha as the sun began its descent toward evening. "We won, my lord, at significant cost, but we won. Victor is dead." Donovan shifted back to human form, accepting the cloak someone offered to cover his nakedness. His dark magic dies with him. But yes, the cost was high. See that the families of our fallen are cared for. They sacrificed everything so others might live safely. "It will be done." Marcus paused, then gestured toward the castle. "Your mate waits on the battlements. She has not moved since you fell. I think she fears that if she looks away, you might disappear. Then I should go reassure her that I am quite solid and decidedly present." Donovan managed a slight smile despite his exhaustion. "Though I may require assistance walking. That curse did more damage than I care to admit." The journey back to Raven's Hollow took on the quality of a victory procession despite the somber mood. Soldiers lined the path, saluting their alpha's return. Servants emerged to offer food and drink. Even the horses seemed to celebrate, their whinnies carrying joy that the threat had passed. Seraphina met Donovan at the castle gates. She had descended from the battlements but gotten no further, as though crossing that threshold required his presence. When she saw him approaching, alive and mostly whole, something in her expression cracked. She ran to him and threw herself into his arms with force that nearly knocked him backward. "You died." Her voice came muffled against his chest. "I felt you die through the bond." "I was dying." Donovan held her tightly, breathing in the scent of her hair and feeling grateful beyond words to be alive for this moment. "But you saved me. Your magic pulled me back from whatever darkness was claiming me. I could not lose you." Seraphina pulled back enough to look at his face, tears streaming freely. "Not after finding the courage to accept the bond, not after beginning to believe that I might deserve happiness." "You deserve everything." Donovan cupped her face gently, wiping away tears with calloused thumbs. "You are brave and powerful and worthy of far more than a scarred soldier with too much baggage and a tendency toward self-sacrifice." "Then we match perfectly." Seraphina laughed through her tears. "Because I am a traumatized woman with barely controlled magic and a talent for destroying dark rituals." "A perfect match indeed." Donovan leaned down and kissed her, properly this time, with witnesses and daylight and no uncertainty remaining about their intentions. The mate bond sang between them, silver light visible even to human eyes. This was what it meant to be fated, to find someone whose soul recognized yours across all barriers of logic and circumstance. When they finally parted, Eliza stood nearby with Sister Margaret and Marcus. The child's face showed relief and joy, and something else, the satisfied expression of someone who had predicted this outcome and proven correct. "You are keeping her, yes?" Eliza asked with 8-year-old directness. "Because she is Pack now, and we do not abandon Pack. I am keeping her, if she will have me." Donovan looked at Seraphina questioningly, knowing that assumptions, even reasonable ones, required explicit confirmation. "I will have you." Seraphina spoke clearly enough for all to hear. "I accept the mate bond, accept you, accept this strange, wonderful family you have offered me, and I swear by the Moon Mother that I will stand beside you through whatever comes next." "Then we should make it official." Sister Margaret stepped forward with the satisfied expression of someone who had orchestrated successful campaign. "There are rituals, ceremonies that bind Shifter and Moon Priestess in ways recognized by both human law and wolf custom. Shall we begin preparations?" "Not today." Donovan felt exhaustion pulling at him like tide. "Today we mourn our dead and celebrate our survival. Tomorrow we can think about ceremonies and futures. Tonight I simply want to hold my mate and my daughter and be grateful we all lived to see another sunset." The sentiment was universal. Raven's Hollow had survived its greatest trial. The corrupted threat had been eliminated. The winter wolf had returned not just to battle, but to life itself. And two people who had believed themselves broken beyond repair had discovered that healing was possible when hearts dared to hope again. Sister Margaret performed the mate bond ceremony on the first night of the new moon, declaring it symbolically appropriate for new beginnings. A month later, they married under human law in a ceremony that brought allies from across the kingdom. But the true celebration was not in grand rituals. It was in the quiet moments, in Seraphina's laughter returning to halls that had known too much sorrow, in the way Eliza called her mother without hesitation, in the pack bonds reforming stronger than before. 5 years passed in contentment that Donovan had not believed possible after Catherine's death. Eliza grew into a remarkable young woman, already showing the tactical mind and leadership qualities that would someday make her a formidable alpha in her own right. She could shift now, her wolf form a beautiful silver gray that combined the best traits of both her parents. James arrived in the second year of the marriage, a boisterous boy who inherited his father's white fur and his mother's green eyes. He terrorized the castle staff with endless energy and curiosity, but showed the kind heart that suggested he would grow into a man of honor and compassion. Little Catherine was born in the 5th year, a daughter with auburn hair like her mother, and the faint marks of Moon Priestess heritage visible to those who knew how to look. She showed signs of powerful magic even in infancy, suggesting she would someday surpass her mother in ability if properly trained. On a morning that dawned clear and bright, Donovan stood in the training yard, watching Eliza spar with Marcus in wolf form. His eldest daughter had her opponent on the defensive, using tactics her father had taught combined with innovations uniquely her own. She would be ready for her alpha trials soon, ready to earn rank through merit rather than inheritance. You are proud of her. Seraphina appeared at his elbow, baby Catherine cradled against her chest, while young James chased butterflies nearby. As you should be. She will be magnificent. She already is. Donovan wrapped his arm around his wife's shoulders, pulling her close. All 3 of them are. We are blessed beyond measure. Do you still think of Catherine? The question came without jealousy, simply curiosity. Does her memory pain you? I think of her often, with gratitude rather than pain. Donovan considered his answer carefully. She gave me Eliza, gave me years of happiness before plague took her, and in death, she gave me the wisdom to open my heart again. I honor her memory by living fully rather than merely surviving. She would be pleased. Seraphina leaned into his embrace. Pleased that you found love again. Pleased that our children thrive. Pleased that the winter wolf runs free rather than caged by grief and misguided oaths. The winter wolf had indeed found his way home. Not the home he had lost, but a new one built on foundations of hard-won wisdom and love that had survived every test. He had broken the chains that bound him, faced the darkness that threatened everything precious, and emerged with a family that made every sacrifice worthwhile. In the training yard, Eliza pinned Marcus and held position until he yielded. The young she-wolf stepped back and shifted to human form, laughing with the joy of someone who had mastered difficult skill. Her gray eyes found her father watching, and she waved with the confidence of someone who knew she was loved and supported absolutely. Donovan waved back, his heart full in ways he had thought impossible after Catherine's death. The blood oath had been broken, the corruption destroyed, the mate found and claimed, and in the process, he had learned that love did not divide itself among multiple recipients. It multiplied, growing stronger with each person added to the circle of protection and devotion. The sun climbed higher over Raven's Hollow, painting the mountains in shades of gold and amber. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, not in threat or warning, but in celebration. The winter wolf had returned, and he had brought with him the promise of spring after endless winter. And as Donovan stood surrounded by his family, feeling the mate bond pulse gently between himself and Seraphina, watching his children play in the castle that had survived every storm, he understood the final truth. Some oaths were meant to be broken. Some chains were meant to be shattered. Some winters were meant to end. And when they did, when spring finally arrived after the longest darkness, life bloomed with intensity that made every frozen day worthwhile. The Alpha's blood oath had been paid in full, not through death or denial, but through the courage to love again. And that, the winter wolf knew, was the most powerful magic of all.